Challenge, Day 3 at 21 Convention. Last day, as you guys know. Next speaker up is a surprise, not speaker, he's definitely been here for a while, but it's a surprise secondary presentation that he's developed for us. It's going to be from Steve Mayeda, now a 8-event speaker of the 21 Convention with like 10 speeches now on his belt. Yeah, I think that's actually the correct numbers. And this speech is going to be on, as you can see, seduction and fighting, but the title is Sex and Violence. It's going to be a 30-minute evolution on self-defense as it's incorporated into this event. So something Steve has kind of spun off and made his own. He's going to own that shit. It's going to be awesome. I think he has the blessings of Ed Aiken, right? Maybe? Yeah? We'll see. And it's going to be awesome. So if you guys can give him your full attention and a round of applause, I appreciate it.
All right. Yeah. Okay, guys, so this is, thanks for the great introduction, and also I know you guys just had lunch. It's going to be real quick. One, I really like to teach application of stuff, and in the previous speeches, there was a little bit more theory, so we're going to move fast here. We just got about 30 minutes. What I want to talk about is sex and violence. These are two kind of big things in my life. When I got involved in seduction, it wasn't, look, my main motivation was not necessarily to lay a bunch of women or do all this stuff. When I was signing up for email lists or when I was interested in this stuff, it wasn't to get a lot of attention as like a pickup guy or anything like that. Now, don't get me wrong. Those things all mattered at different times. You know, I still wanted those things. I'd still be alone at different times and want to get attention and yada, yada, yada. When it came to fighting, it was the same thing. It wasn't that I wanted to, be some badass dude. Of course, that goes into it. It wasn't that I wanted to, pick fights or anything like that or get in fights and prove myself. Don't get me wrong. In the timeline of that I've been alive, those have been big factors in my decision-making and all that sort of stuff. What mattered is my life always had an aspect of those things. Now, really quickly, part of my life has to do with some kind of crazy shit. I was talking to Anthony about it. He's like, man, maybe some people can't relate with that. As I stand here today, I'm a pretty happy guy. I like being free. I like living my identity. I like being clean in who I am and all that sort of stuff. But, I grew up like everybody. We all had problems. I grew up in kind of an abusive household. My first girlfriend, 2 weeks into it, 10 days into it, she ended up, and I saw it. It's actually kind of a crazy story. When I walked across the street, the guys that were around her ended up kidnapping her and doing all this fucked up shit, sexually assaulting her. And that was my first sexual experience. I didn't have a girlfriend for years. There was a lot of like anger and pissed offness, whether the world created that, I created that, I continued it. And that's what's important. So two things that were big for me that absolutely changed my life are aspects of seduction, which I teach in that industry, and fighting, which I don't want to represent myself as a fighter. That's not the point of this. I train in a bunch of different stuff, but it means a lot of things. Through application of these, gained great insight, okay? What's so interesting about both of these parallels, if you dive into either of them, and it looks like, we're all kind of interested in this seduction thing, but if you dive into either of them, it can make or break you. And this is kind of what this is the MasterCard logo here, but what these two diagrams are what we're going to get into, right? So we can practice seduction, we can practice fighting, martial arts, or whatever the hell it is, and we could tap into a lot of anger, we could tap into a lot of fear, a lot of rage, a lot of lack of control, a lot of need to control, a lot of insecurities, or we could hit what I find the true meaning, why I got involved in seduction, why I got involved in fighting, and why I didn't even ask for these things. They were more outlets to kind of put a way of life and to formulate a lot of the chaos that calmed down in my head and my emotions and all that sort of stuff, to really value the aspects of being a man and masculinity, to hit peace, to hit love, self-acceptance, unity, sharing, all those things. What I call is spiritual principles, right? Real quick right here, what I wanted to get into, I was thinking about this the other night, and I actually was talking about this. This speech kind of they were like, hey, do you want to give a speech that has to do with something a little bit other than seduction and maybe some self-defense stuff? And I'm like, well, okay, this was 2 days ago. So I started thinking about this stuff, and I thought, man, what makes seduction work, what makes fighting work is right here. They're both forms of communication. And if we look at this, and we can take this principle and start to apply it to many, many things, is if you imagine this is the seducer. Let's say this is you. This is you applying some of the great stuff you heard from whoever you heard speak and yada, 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 and you're applying the techniques to put into action. And this is the, hopefully the female, not animal, or is that legal in Australia? Because if somebody's got to take me sightseeing. But this is the action. All the technique, all the theory, all the ideas, all that sort of stuff means nothing if it is not represented by true action, okay? And the same thing goes for fighting. That was really important. I have a couple of teachers, but my main teacher is Master Ed Aiken, as I will call him, and he is a JKD practitioner. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He helps me out in like many, many things. Part of the idea of JKD, it's Bruce Lee's martial art, which really wasn't an attachment to him, but it was to learn anything that worked, all right? And of course, you could follow tradition, you could follow, the different katas or whatever forms, which are all great, but if it cannot work in a fight, it's meaningless. Okay, so what was really important is we take the martial art, the martial artist, putting an application of that without sparring, without actual fighting, without awareness of what the human body, human mind is capable in those different situations, it's pointless, okay? And fighting, just like seduction, is a communication. That's what these two circles represent, is two things intersecting. When they intersect, that is where the verb, the action happens. Fighting does not have to be violence, though. And this is where we get into sex and violence. Last night, some guys were asking me about, what was it? And there's nothing wrong with this, and if we want to just keep the microphone live, I don't know, and whoever wants to pass it around. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll call on you when that time is appropriate or whatever. But the deal is when we get into misrepresentations of seduction, misrepresentations of fighting, that's when violence occurs. And violence is actually much different than either of these things. For instance, I've been talking to people about jiu-jitsu here, and there he is. So when we get into Brazilian jiu-jitsu, one of the aspects of it, it's you talk to anybody who trains it, it's a martial art that humbles you. It's something, if you train true Brazilian jiu-jitsu, there's nothing like crazy about it. There's nothing egotistical about it. There's nothing about being a dick. There's nothing about being somebody who's going to kick somebody's ass. It's really humbling, and it's an exchange. But one of the keys in training fundamentally of Brazilian jiu-jitsu is that you're always sparring. So you learn technique, you drill technique, you learn the different leverage points, all that stuff, but you have to be able to apply it. That sparring can be light, it can be rough, but it's not to hurt anybody, right? And the same thing goes for JKD. You need to spar. That's one of the fundamental aspects of it. In JKD, a very tactical martial art, kind of like Krav Maga, but Krav Maga, by definition, doesn't have sparring in it, whereas JKD is a big thing of it. Now, what happens is in that,